Okay, so that's a summary of the soul's incarnation. Now, what does that have to do with sex, is the question, right? So what we need to do is focus now on what this particular incarnation process, how and what effect that has on sexuality, on sexual attraction. Okay, so here we have the two halves of the soul. And let's look at a heterosexual couple. Remember, they've got in their bodies now, so we'll just draw their bodies as a little side point, because really the bodies are just a little side point to the soul. The soul envelops, and covers those bodies. In other words, the soul provides the energy for those bodies to exist. And a lot of the connection, and as soon as when a person passes, the soul is no longer connected with one of those bodies, and therefore the body cannot exist. It's quite simple. And from that moment on, it'll decay eventually until it decays to nothing, as does everything that it doesn't have energy on God's universe. It decays to another form of energy. It always occurs like that. So here we have the two halves with their bodies. Oh, the guy's got his hands up in the air there, babe. Hooray! We're incarnated. Hooray, sex, is that what it is? So the two halves are incarnated, right? So now, and let's say they're now beginning this process of growing. In other words, they're developing, they're absorbing things from the universe and therefore absorbing things from their experience. So they're starting to feel things from other people, in other words, in particular from other people, but they have other experiences going on as well, and they start developing emotionally as well, and they start growing. And during this period of growth, the first few years of growth, there isn't very much of a focus on connection with the other half of themselves, because they're still discovering themselves. So therefore, there's very little connection with the other half of yourself, with the exception of energy flowing between the two halves of the soul. In other words, if I'm only 2 years of age, I have a very slightly developed intellect in comparison to when I'm 8 years of age. I have a very slightly developed awareness of myself when I'm 2 in compared to when I'm 7, and in comparison to when I'm 20. So in that very slight condition of personal awareness when I'm 2 years of age, it's very, very hard for me then to become aware, even with an intellectual concept of some kind, that I have another half, and be aware of where that other half is. Is there any questions about the state of growing, Anta?
Could you, I just, grab some water.
Sure. We wanted to know, is the soul aware of the other half, even though the two bodies might not be?
Yes, the soul is aware of the other half. And this is the interesting thing, is that because of the multi-generational injuries on the planet, there is very, very little awareness of soulmates on the planet. So the average person who is born onto this planet, who is incarnated onto this planet, firstly conceived and then born, absorbs the belief systems very, very rapidly of its parents. And almost all parents on the planet have the belief system that, you can connect to anybody. There's lots of people you could spend the rest of your life with. It's just a choice. And so this belief system influences the intellect of the spirit body's mind of the child. And so therefore it feels quite unknowing in terms of, from a very young age, unknowing of a potential connection between itself and its other half.
However, it's not unknowing, it's blocked.
It's blocked.
It's already blocked.
It's blocked to the connection through the emotional impact of the parents. But the souls themselves can still have information, the two halves still have information flowing between them. And often that will remain for the entire of their life, no matter how much we're denying it in our mind. So there is this thing that can happen all through your life, actually, where you have this really strange feeling sometimes that something's happening to someone else and you don't even know that other person, let alone know what's happening to them, but it's something not very nice. In other words, there's this connection with some and feelings of what do you call it? John, the Apostle John would call it discombobulation, feelings of
An unsettled feeling.
an unsettled feeling inside of yourself, and not understanding any reason why you feel so unsettled or anything like that. But the reality is that often it's the other half of yourself that's quite unsettled or going through some pain or suffering, and one half, your half, is feeling that. So yes, there is an energy flow of information and emotions and feelings to other half of the soul, and that will always be the case. However, the more intellectually shut down we become, our soul becomes like a dried out prune. So if you could think about it, as I'm shutting down myself, shutting down my desires, shutting down my passions, shutting down love, this is something that happens throughout our life generally. What happens is this soul, instead of looking the nice, pristine, let's say that's the soul shape for an example, now it's looking like this, like this withered up prune, like that's what it looks like. Very little energy coming out of it. And because there's very little energy coming out of it to anything, there is also very little energy coming out of it to its other half. So its other half may be in a pristine condition, right? But this half would not feel very much of the other half in that condition. Does that make sense?